All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this evening where we're reviewing test procedures and what the latest is regarding the tests. Okay, the DVSA have made a number of changes over the last, let's say, 3 months, because they've also introduced a system now for us as driving schools to help the students with the booking of their driving tests. Now, that system it's now been recognized that this is a good way to go, because a lot of people, when they have to do a driving course or a driving test, they need to get a driving test booked. And that whole procedure can be very difficult and create a lot of timing problems for them. So we have, obviously, in BDS London, we have systems so that we can book the tests, record the tests, and help the students get through their driving tests. In our system, we also have a number of websites that we manage so that we can help people in local areas and where our instructors are based. We have 6 websites that are purely registered for people within specific areas to get to know the instructors we use in those areas as well. This is a new feature that we've introduced as well to help the DVSA recognize our instructors, and also to know that we are presenting people who have been properly prepared for the tests. That's one of the reasons we do that. Okay, so are there any questions about that? The DVSA have got 3 initiatives maybe we should quickly examine. I'm just going to share a screen with you. Let me do that. The first initiative that the DVSA have got is the revised booking service for driving schools like ourselves. That's the first initiative. And that was introduced on or around about the 9th of January. And we've had a little bit of teething problems, but that's one of the initiatives. The second initiative, which is going to be rolled out tomorrow on the 10th of February, is where the DVSA have improved our ability to swap tests for students. That's another initiative that they have introduced. There are 2 initiatives as far as the driving test centers are concerned. Since I think the 25th of January, the driving examiners are now wearing body cams on the test. So because they want to record if you get upset with them, and so that they've got proof of any misdoings from a driver's side. So the driver examiners are wearing body cams now. So be really careful how you deal with an examiner, because what you say and what you do in relation to the relationship between yourself and the examiner can be recorded, and you can be taken up on anything that you might do which is inappropriate. So you have to be really careful with how you deal with the examiners so that you don't step into a trap there. Be aware of the body cams. This is really, really important. Okay, so then the other thing that that's also being rolled out by the DVSA at the moment is that they have started introducing a new system where they are trialing test centers that are not in test centers. So new test areas. I think, Lariska, you had a booking like that today, didn't you? You had a booking in some strange place, not far away from London, in a test center area, but it was just a random address. Is that correct?
Yes, I had a client who wanted a test in Gosforth.
Okay, which is not a recognized test center. So this is a new system that they're trialing. So they are going to probably have examiners so that examiners can work from specific areas, and they don't have to have offices set up where the examiners are going to work from. This is a new system that they are trialing at the moment. It's not officially been recognized as going ahead. But body cams, please be careful. That is really, really important. that you realize that that's there. I also want to say this is one of the things that has come up a lot in the past. Don't challenge an examiner on a driving test. If you end up with a fail on a driving test, really simply just say yes, cry a little bit, take out your hanky, feel bad about it, but get on and move on. Because let's assume you disagree with what the examiner saw, and let's assume it's a situation where you are actually right. What's going to happen is they are going to take 3 to 4 to 6 months to review that, because you're going to put in a complaint. You are going to complain. That's going to go through their system. 6 months later, they'll do a driving. They might give you a free driving test 6 months later or later. You will get that free driving test. There will be 2 examiners in the test, and if you sneeze, you will fail just so that they can prove you were wrong. You're not going to. It's not a win situation. Best thing is take out your hanky, cry a little bit, get on with it. Let's book you a test and get it over and done with. There's really no value in challenging the examiners. If you wanted to do a challenge on an examiner, do it after you've passed your test. Take it back at that stage and say, listen, I was really uncomfortable. Doesn't mean you can't complain. So I was really uncomfortable, and we have done that in the past where we've had problems with examiners who were really nasty to students. It's quietly, we just get on with it, and then later we record everything and we just say, look, we're not expecting anything. We just want to highlight this issue. And obviously, if that's happening to more than one person, then it is going to raise issues. But it's not worth it. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is, please, guys, everybody who goes to a driving test, it doesn't matter who you are, what gender you are, just remember you've got to dress respectfully. Don't go there with the previous night's party clothes that are just not appropriate, and you're not clean and you do not smell well. That's not a good idea to go on a test like that, because you're going to be irritating the examiner, because he's going to feel you disrespecting him. And then he's got no latitude for you to make mistakes. So be really careful how you dress and how you present yourself at the test. You've got to show respect to these examiners. We all have to show respect to them. They have got a difficult job to do, and we should do the best we can to make their job easier. That will make your pass an easier job as well. Okay, so those are some of the basics I just wanted to tell everybody about. Now, I had a specific case today which was really interesting. Got a person who's got 25 years of driving experience, and he's been driving in another country, and he now has to get his UK license. And I really, guys, since 2006, I can't tell you how many people like this I've got through a driving test and how many I haven't got through a driving test. Because when you go to this driving test, the examiner has got 3 main areas that he's testing or looking at for you. He's looking at that you do on the test. The 3 main areas that the examiner is looking at on the test are, number 1, is, are you capable of controlling the car? In other words, you control the speed of the car, you control the turning of the car, those sort of things. Are you driving accurately? That's the other thing. Now, most people who've got a lot of experience will get those 2 right. That's not the most difficult part. The third thing is what they call safety. And within the safety area, there are procedures you have to follow. Looking in your mirrors, using your mirrors correctly, having your mirrors set correctly, using those mirrors in a way that the examiner is comfortable that you are going to be very cognitive of the traffic that is coming from behind or next to your vehicles. And as the traffic gets heavier and heavier, and we've got more electric scooters, electric bikes, electric whatever on the roads, which we cannot hear, the more important your mirrors are going to become. And the use of those mirrors and the procedures with which you carry out the safety part of the driving is a procedural thing, which the UK has very specific procedures that need to be followed. And just just a repeat in minor errors in a specific area, like just the wrong observation when you move off. If you do it 3 times, the examiner fails you for it. And you might have moved off in 25 years, never had an accident. That doesn't qualify you as a safe driver in this country. And that's what people must realize, that if you want to go to that driving test and pass it, make sure that right from the beginning, you have got those safety procedures properly sorted out. One last thing to mention here is there are, in my books, 3 categories of faults you can make. There are minor faults, which you are allowed to amass up to 15 and still pass your test. But you cannot make a single serious or dangerous fault. Then you fail your test. And then I also have what I call judgment calls. And that might be a minor fault, it might be an ignore fault, or it might actually be a serious or dangerous fault. It depends on the circumstances, and that's left to the judgment of the examiner. When you're preparing for the test, you need to make sure that the 3 categories of faults you are not making are judgment faults, where the examiner can judge and has to make a decision as to where the category of fault falls. You cannot afford a judgment fault. The second thing you can't afford is you can't afford a serious fault, and you can't afford a dangerous fault. Any one of those 3 types of faults can fail. But having too many minor faults as well can fail you. And I must be really honest, I've only had 1 student in the, 18 years of teaching that's actually failed on too many minor faults. You really have to work hard at building up that accumulation of minor faults. Normally, when a person gets to 8 or 9 minor faults on a drive, they will commit at least 1 serious or dangerous fault within those things. And the examiners get very uncomfortable once you go over 8 or 9 minor faults. They tend to just accept that you haven't got it sorted yet. So, and then they will look for any reason. Okay, Yolanda, you've got a question.
What is a serious fault? And what is
a serious fault? Might be repetitive, might be 3 times not looking in your mirror when you're moving off properly, or not looking over your shoulder when you're moving off. A serious fault is not recognizing a mini roundabout when you get to it. A serious fault is there are a number of serious type faults, but mostly most of them have to do with traffic, your interaction as far as traffic is concerned, incorrect interpretation of the dangers of traffic when you're driving.
And a dangerous fault?
Well, a dangerous fault is you coming out of a junction in front of another car and they have to slow down, or, not dealing correctly with a roundabout, or running across an amber light when you should have stopped, or not seeing a red light or a temporary traffic light and the examiner having to use the emergency brake to stop you, or a pedestrian walking onto a pedestrian crossing and you haven't seen them coming and the examiner has to stop you. Anything which can potentially be an accident.
So where the examiner needs to stop you to prevent whatever?
It's typically a dangerous fault, yes. It's not the only one. It's typically will be classified as a dangerous fault. Normally, if the examiner intervenes, that's the end of your test. You may as well accept that when the examiner has intervened, either by making an adjustment to your steering or to using the brake or clutch on his side, that normally indicates that you've had a serious fault. Okay. All right. The thing with the faults as well, I think it's really difficult sometimes to know. I think the best thing you can do if you think you've made a serious, dangerous, or a fault that may fail you for your test, is simply remember that the test is not over until the examiner has pulled you up and said, okay, that's the end of your test. Which can happen during the drive. If he feels unsafe, he might decide he wants to walk back because it's a lovely morning and he needs his cup of tea. And he doesn't want to sit in the car with you being dangerous while you're driving. And I've seen that happen a number of times where the examiner's just decided he can't do this anymore. And then he gets out of the car and pulls you over and leaves you there and gets out of the car. The question is, what do you do in a situation like that? You stop, you pull over in a safe place. The examiner will pull you over and you make sure the car is in a safe place. And then you sit in the car, you find the instructor, and you tell him, look, I'm sitting on the M11 looking in the wrong direction. I went up a down ramp by accident coming off a roundabout. And I turned up the ramp and there were a whole lot of cars charging at us. So the examiner pulled me off. You need to come and rescue your car. Not a good position to be in. But yeah, so you just be careful out there. It's dangerous. Okay. All right, guys, that's about it for the reviews. We have, I think what is really important is we have BDS online. That is our, I'm just going to share my screen for that just so everyone can have a look at it. Okay, so we have BDS online, which has got all our which has got a whole lot of videos which can help you prepare and get ready for the test. These are invaluable. They save you lots of time, lots of money, and are invaluable to use on the driving test. So please look at that, go into that. If you've signed up with us, you get free access to this. These videos are really worth looking. They're not there for entertainment. We will not say that they're worth anything as far as entertainment are concerned, but they were purely produced so that you could learn how to pass your driving test, and will support you in getting you ready for your driving test. Okay, and then I just had a little idea of this is how you should not dress for your driving test. Not a good idea. I don't think the examiner is going to enjoy that too much. I don't suppose you could be much worse than that. And this is the latest effort by the examiners. They are running this in. This is where they are doing random locations for driving tests, for you to meet your driving examiner and do a driving test. They're running this in Birmingham, Kings Heath, Doncaster, Dumfries, and Mill Hill, London. So in the Mill Hill or near the Mill Hill area in London. The content of the test doesn't change. The examiner still wears a body cam. Please remember the body cam. The examiner still wears the body cam. Let's quickly look at what Margot posted just now. This is really important. I'm going to take you to it. Let's do it here. I'm just going to share my screen again with you. Okay, so Margot posted this on. This is ldgo.uk is one of our websites, and the question was, what is the first time pass rate, guys? It is not what the DVSA tell you it is. So what percentage of people pass the driving test the first time? According to figures from the Driver Vehicles Agency, the pass rate for 2020 was 49.5%. Now, let's analyze that. That means that 49%, let's call it 50%. 50% of people going for the test will pass. But 50% of those people going for the test are on their second test. And if you're looking at 49%, if you want a 100% chance of passing the test, you have to go to the test 3 times. Otherwise, you won't pass it. Therefore, the first time pass rates. Now, remember, if you now take away the people who passed the first time and leave the rest at 50% and take the people who passed the second time away, it means some people are doing 4 to 5 tests before they pass. Up to 5 tests or more before they pass. The chances of you passing the test the first time is less than 20%. Because this is how many people pass the test. That doesn't mean those are all those 100 people that went was the first time they went for the test. Some of them are going the second time. Some of them are going the third time. Some are going the fourth and the fifth time. But only 50% of that whole group of 100 will pass the test. And the greater majority of those people going there for the test have gone more than once for the test already. So I worked this out before, and statistically, only 17% of people can actually pass the test the first time. Otherwise, that statistic cannot work. And it's even less than that in some test centers. So although that's the number of people that pass the test when they go for the test, that's not, most of them haven't gone there for the first time to do the test. Margot?
It makes sense, absolutely.
That's the number of people. So out of every 100 people that go for the test, they're saying the average is 49.5% will pass. Well, I'm telling you that's high. I don't think it's like that. Go to most test centers, their pass rates are less than that.
So how do you get to pass your driving test? I don't want to do my test 3 times.
You have to do 3 things. You have to make sure that you've got control of the car, that you are driving accurately in terms of the lines on the road and the positioning, very, very accurate as far as that is concerned. You've got to make sure your speed is accurate. You need to know what those things are. And you need to know what the procedures are, of the procedures in terms of the thing. You need to really do a proper preparation. You're not going to go there. Listen, you cannot. I defy anybody saying to me that if you can't drive, my approach is if you can't drive for 1 hour without making a serious, dangerous, or judgment call mistake, you have to drive during 1 hour under test conditions and not make any of those mistakes. If you can't do that, you can't pass your test. End of story. Finish. You're just wasting your time. Wasting your time and your money. That's all you're doing. If you've got a good instructor, that instructor should give you a mock test. And during that hour, you shouldn't have more than 8 minor mistakes. If you've got more than 8 minor mistakes, invariably, you'll still fail your test because the actual test duration is 38 to 40 minutes. But remember, on that day, you are nervous. You are going to get no pointers. You're going to be driving completely alone. You are not going to even be told by the examiner if you make minor mistakes. So you can quite easily repeat minor mistakes. And if you get too many minor mistakes in the same category, that's it as well. That becomes a serious or dangerous fault, and that's the end of your test. This test is known to be the second most difficult test in the world when it comes to driving. I think it's only Sweden that has a more difficult test routine than what the UK has. It's not like in America where you drive around the block. If you can drive around the block and survive that, then you get your license. In South Africa, you just pay the right person and you get your license, mostly, sometimes. But that's the way it is. And kind of in Greece, it's like that as well. But anyway, this isn't a joke. In this country, they don't want to see if you can drive by putting you out on the road with a license to see if you die. They try to catch you before you get to the dying point. Okay. All right. So do you understand the statistic that you've got here, Margot?
Absolutely. I've got it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think if we just looked at something, let's see if we can find this quickly. Driving test center. Driving test center. Pass rate. Let's just see what that gives us. 33%. See that? 34%. Once they test pass rates. There we are. Okay, now if you think of this, out of every 100 people who go there, 33% of them pass their test. Out of every 100 people who go there, 33% of them pass. So only 33 pass their test. You have to go 3 times to know that you're going to pass. You've got a 100% chance of passing your test, minimum. So to be a first-time pass rate in that, you're looking at about 7 or 6%. Only 6 or 7% of the people will go there and pass their actual exams the first time. Can you understand that, Margot?
Yes, I've got it. I totally understand. Absolutely, totally.
Okay.
I see it there, and I've got it. I'll sort that out.
Yeah. So I think what we must do is actually do the mathematics. Just say, okay, if the pass rate in the test center is this much, then the chance of you having to pass the first time is more or less this much. Statistically, that's the way it will work. Okay?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's not a joke, the test. All right. That's it. That's that one answered. Any other questions you want me to deal? First time pass rate. What is your instructor's pass rate? That is very difficult. I think sometimes that can be unfair as well, because some instructors deal with people with disabilities, and the areas they drive in are more difficult. I have tremendous respect for people who teach people in Wood Green, because it's one of the most difficult areas to teach someone because of the attitude of the other drivers in that area. And I think if you look at the pass rate of those instructors compared to instructors who might be driving in the Hebrides in North Scotland, that's where they get the high pass rates at 46 and 50 and 50 or 77%. We don't have those sort of pass rates in central London. Even if you look at any of the real test centres in London, most of the London test centres are between 33 and about 36 or 37%. So it's instructor's pass rate is the best thing is to look at the client reviews in terms of an instructor. The clients normally know whether the instructor is good or not. Okay. All right. Why should I do an intensive course? You should absolutely never ever do 1 hour driving lessons. And the reason for that is really simple. When someone does a 1 hour lesson or does a task, this is now proven statistically by work observation statistics. Work observation statistics will tell you that when you start a new task, you have a 15 to 20 minute lead-in time, which is time you're getting ready and preparing to do the task or getting to do the task. And then you have a 15 to 20 minute lead-out time, which means that in a 1 hour lesson, you will effectively only be learning to drive for about 20 to 25 minutes when you do a 1 hour lesson. Now, when you do a 2 hour or 3 hour lesson, that means that hour in the middle is very effective. So you're upping in a 2 hour lesson, you are going to do 30 to 40% more learning per hour than what you are going to do in a 1 hour lesson. So 1 hour lesson is a total waste of time. It's a waste of time for the instructor, and it's a waste of time for the student. Students should never do less than 2 hours. Some students struggle to concentrate for more than 2 hours, and they shouldn't do more than 2 hours. But if a student struggles to concentrate 2 hours, then bring the lessons down to 1 3/4 or 1.5 hours. It's still much more effective than a 1 hour lesson. Okay? So 2 hours or more is what I would recommend for everybody. I would not recommend 1 hour lessons. They're a waste of time, complete waste of time and money. You'll end up doing 30% more hours in total to get your driving license if you do 1 hour lessons, 30 to 40% more hours. You can really, and some of the instructors who sit next to the road and talk a lot of rubbish to you when you should be driving are going to double the hours you spend in their car before they actually pass their driving test. And an intensive course, the reason you do an intensive course is because it reduces the number of hours you need to get your pass, because you are fresh and you are remembering and your knowledge bleed is less. Imagine this. I get in the car today with a student and I do an intensive course with him. Tomorrow when I meet that student, I can remember what we did yesterday. I can follow up as an instructor. He can remember what he did yesterday. We can follow and build. If I do 2 hours with the student once a week, then I've got to try and remember what we did last week. He's got to try and remember what he did last week, and he's had knowledge bleed in the meantime. And then that increases the number of hours he's going to spend as well. The best type of thing to do is to do a 3 or 4 hour intensive course per day. And as long as the student can actually absorb for that length of time, then those types of courses are probably the best, and do them on a consecutive basis. So within a 7 to a 7 day period, or 5 to 7 day period, you can actually do the whole driving course. It's not that difficult to do over a period of time of 7 days. Okay, and an intensive course is going to reduce your overall costs. It's going to reduce the pain of learning, and it's going to, in the end, give you the same result as what anything else, because the result is to pass the driving test, and the examiners will check whether you know what you're doing, and if you know what you're doing when you're doing your test, you will pass the test.
Why will it be cheaper?
Because you're going to do less hours. You're going to end up doing less hours on any intensive course. But I will stress this. There are some people who can't concentrate for that period of time. So you have to do the intensive course in accordance with what is comfortable for the student. I've had students who struggle to do 2 hours at a time because there's too much, they get too stressed during that period of time, and it makes it difficult for them. All right, are there any more questions we need to deal with tonight?
Not from me, thank you.
All right, and if anybody has got questions to follow and they need a bit of help with anything, they're welcome to call us. But please, I think the most important thing for everybody is go to bdsonline.com, get your access sorted to that, and go through those tutorials. They are excellent for helping you pass your driving test. They really are very, very good. And it reduces the number of hours as well, because you go there, you study that material. It means that material is designed for you to prepare for the driving test. And it is the material that the driving instructors are going to take you through during your driving lessons. Now, if you've already gone through that and you've learned that material, then the driving instructor doesn't need to. You can do the driving, which is what you need. You need the driving, practical application of how to do the driving and apply those rules to your actual driving, which then reduces the number of hours you have to do on an intensive course. I've had numerous students go and do the roundabouts, and then I'd ask them the questions just to make sure they know what they're doing, and then just go straight into the practical driving. And it saves 1.5 to 2 hours of preparation we don't have to do, because you've done it, and the knowledge from there is very, very good. It's very good knowledge. BDS Online, really important. Save you a lot of time and a lot of effort because the procedures are there. Okay, so what's the question?
So he asked, can a bike improve driving?
If you've been riding a motorcycle, obviously, that will help. The thing that what bike riding does is it makes you more aware. You become more aware of what the traffic is about. The only problem with bike riders are they teach themselves very bad habits. That's the only thing I have against that sort of thing. But if the bike rider tends to learn the rules of the road and then uses the traffic lights without going over them, yes, that will make a difference. Absolutely no reason that won't help. And I have taught many times, somebody comes and they've got a motorcycle license and then they want to get a driving license. And it's a lot easier to teach somebody like that because they've got a lot of road experience, and that helps as well. So yes, the answer is yes, as long as it's done properly. And I recommend that people do as much private driving as possible. But the caveat on that is if you are going to go away and do private driving while you're getting your lessons and you don't apply the rules that you've been learned on how to do it with your driving instructor, and you don't apply that to your normal driving, all you're doing is teaching yourself bad habits that will make you fail the test. But if you go away with those rules and you don't take shortcuts on the rules, that is going to be very beneficial to you when you actually do your test. So it is how you apply that private practice. And that will apply to bike riding, scooter riding, whatever riding or driving you do on the roads. If you apply good procedures and you use proper procedures, that is going to help you. But if you start taking shortcuts and learn bad habits, that is going to be detrimental to you. Can I do the test in my own car if it's an electric car? The answer is yes. You can, no problem with that. As long as it's insured and the driving examiner has a mirror so that he can a mirror stuck on the windscreen so he can look at the traffic behind him. You're just going to end up with an automatic license. You won't have a thing, but that'll be perfectly acceptable. The question is, should I do automatic or manual course? And the answer to me is, it all depends on what your objective is with getting your driving license. At the moment, the driving industry is in the process of changing from manual cars to automatic cars. In 4 or 5 years from now, I doubt if you'll even be able to buy a new manual car. The manual cars are getting less and less at the moment in the UK. And I mean, like diesel cars are not even being manufactured or sold anymore because of the regulations. There are still some diesels available, but that's old stock in reality. So all the cars are now hybrids, are becoming hybrids, which are automatic. The hybrids are all automatic, or triptronic gearboxes. Doesn't matter what you call them, they're automatic and regarded as automatic cars. And electric cars are automatic cars. So in 4 or 5 years from now, in the UK, especially in the UK and in Europe, having a manual will be an old style car, which is going to be a jalopy, and it's going to be taken off the roads. People are going to start the governments are going to start taking them off the roads. So unless you go to Africa to go and do a safari in the desert, you probably will never get around to driving a manual car. And even if you do go, a lot of the vehicles, like the SUVs in America, the 4x4s, are most of those cars nowadays are automatic as well. You can't even buy a Range Rover that's not an automatic. So and the difference between the number of lessons you need for a manual and automatic are again about 20 to 30% more. So if you're learning in a manual, it's going to cost you 20 to 30% more in lessons. Now, my suggestion is go for an automatic license, get your license, get the road experience, and then if you really do need a manual license, go back and do the manual license. Not the end of the world. If you're really in the situation where you want to be a van driver for whoever, you're going to be using manuals, yes, but even now you're seeing more and more and more electric and hybrid vans on the road as well, and eventually they are just going to completely phase out the manual cars. What is the easiest test center in London? The one you've been prepared for the most. That's the easiest one. The test center you have been prepared for the most. And that test center is going to be an easy pass if you've done your BDS online tutorials. It just becomes so much easier. I'll tell you what, I have a statistics of first-time passes, which I still will challenge anybody with. 18 people consecutively passing their test the first time, and 18 consecutively. And that is because of the videos, because I insisted on them getting the knowledge that's on the videos. And that helped them to reduce the number of hours they had to do, and they all got first-time passes. And I still do that. My passes are enhanced by the videos, the use of the video. Because a student can go away and think, oh, how did I deal with that roundabout? What do I do about that roundabout, that type of roundabout? And then when they approach the roundabouts, they recognize the roundabouts and they recognize what the procedures are for going through the roundabouts. Or a junction, the taxi maneuver, all these things are on there. How to use your mirrors, how to move off safely, what the examiner is looking for. These videos have been designed for that specific. I always leave a 2-minute gap between me and the car. Instructor says to go forward and it scares me. I'll knock the car in front. What is the normal for that gap? A 1-minute gap is a big gap. It depends on the speed you're doing. And the problem is that this is actually adverse to the procedure. Remember, the slower you are, the longer that 1-minute gap is going. That's your problem. So if you say I'm leaving a 1-minute gap, If you're traveling really slowly, then that 1 minute gap is going to be very big. And if you're traveling really fast, that 1 minute gap is actually going to be shorter. So it shouldn't be a time gap, because that's the wrong position. You should leave a specific period between yourself and the car, from when the time the car passes a specific point and the time you pass that specific point. And that's normally the best way to do it. And the cars nowadays are actually, a lot of the new cars nowadays actually have that built into the cars themselves.
One more question.
Yes.
Emergency stop. I have clients who ask, oh, is it brake first, then clutch, or clutch first and then brake?
Let me explain something. If you are doing an emergency stop and you're thinking about whether you should use the clutch or the brake first, you're not ready for the test. Not ready. Sorry. Go back, practice some more. Whether you use the clutch first or the brake first doesn't really matter. What matters is how fast you get onto the brake in the emergency stop. If you have practiced enough, your both feet will go for those pedals simultaneously. If you're thinking about brake first or clutch first, you're actually not ready for the test. That's a very good way to find out if you're ready to do the test. Do an emergency stop. If you do an emergency stop in a manual car and you don't stall the engine and it's a quick reaction, you actually are ready for the test. But if you're sitting there thinking which foot to do what with, you're not ready for that. Simple as that. So just keep practicing, and then when somebody says stop, see what happens. The engine's still running by the time you've stopped and you've done it as quickly as possible, you're ready for the test, because your foot would have gone for that clutch the same time as for the brake, and it wouldn't have stalled.
After an emergency stop, how do you move off?
What you would do, the first thing you would do, and this is in a manual car, there's no question about whether you use the brake or the clutch, because you don't have a clutch anyway, you just use the brake. But you must then see, so once you've done the emergency stop, you must secure the car, and then you must do a full 360 observation, and then you would do normal right signal and move off, checking your mirrors as you move off.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
It's why should I get driving lessons from an instructor and not have a friend or family member teach me?
You can have a friend or family member teach you. That's not serious. But the thing is that the driving instructors are getting feedback from the tests all the time with the examiners. And the driving instructors know what the procedures are that have to be followed. It is useful to get the basics of what you need from a driving instructor, and then have somebody else in the car you can practice with, as long as the car is properly insured and that person is over 21 years old and has had their license for more than 3 years. The only trouble with those sort of things is that if you develop bad habits with that person, you're going to carry those bad habits are going to be the first things that come out in the actual driving test. So it's a way up. I'm not saying don't, I'm saying it has to be properly controlled. What is the chances of you getting a first-time pass if you've only learned from a parent or a friend or a brother or a sister? Highly, highly unlikely. You will really have to make sure they know their oats, because the thing is that what people don't realize is every time a driving instructor goes to a test, he's getting feedback from the examiner, and that feedback is helping him also make sure that he's teaching properly, if he applies it correctly. And that way he's on top of his game all the time of what's current. Your friend might not know that they've got body cams. Your friend might not know that it's going to be a random test center. If it's a random test center, there are new test routes. Your friend might not know which the test routes are. Your friend might not know what the latest procedures are on a specific maneuver. There's lots of those sort of things. Your friend got his license 3 years ago. The test has evolved since 3 years ago. There are new maneuvers. So those are all things that you've got to take into consideration. My recommendation is have a certain volume of lessons from a qualified driving instructor. And when you think you're test ready, let him do a proper mock test with you. But in between all of that, drive then with your friend or your family or whatever, and reduce the costs, absolutely. I don't have a problem with that. And I think that's a way to go if you've got those facilities. But don't go driving with someone and then take shortcuts and not observe properly and play the fool, because you'll end up just demonizing your own test. That's all you're going to do.
There's another question. How do you know when to change your driving instructor?
When you go to the 5th test with him, it's time to change your driving instructor. I'm joking. I don't know how to answer that. I think the important thing is your driving instructor mustn't be sitting on the phone talking all the time. He must be taking notes. He must be sharing his notes with you. You must feel comfortable that he's actually focusing on what you're doing and that he's helping you. And if you go away feeling comfortable and feeling you've done something and you've achieved something, and he hasn't been sitting on the phone all the time, you've got a good driving instructor. And look at the reviews. Have a look, ask him, where are your reviews? Who can I phone about you? Have you done this before? Yeah, that sort of thing. Okay.
I think the feedback is very important. Where
Yeah,
the instructor actually reports on what you've been doing, and also what you're going to, where you're making mistakes, and follow up to follow a next lesson to see how to improve the mistakes you've made previously.
Yeah, and I think that a student, when a student's learning to drive, I mean, you know when you've got a good maths teacher, you know when you've got a bad maths teacher, and it's the same with driving instructors. You'll know when it's a good one, you know when it's a bad one. And I think if a driving instructor is charging you £25 an hour in this climate, he's a bad driving instructor, to be honest with you, because he's not getting other work, and that's not good. All right, everybody, thank you so much for attending. Really, really enjoyed that. That was good. If you've got any questions, get back to us. Everybody out there, don't be afraid to ask. You've got all these beautiful and wonderful client managers who know their roads. That's good. All right, cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.